You know what's truly terrifying about humans? Ambassador Vkr'lak asked, his 4 sets of compound eyes glinting under the conference room's artificial lighting. He paused dramatically, allowing his chelicerae to click together in what passed for a thoughtful gesture among the Aractilian species. Is it our incomprehensible love of spicy food? Because honestly, that scares me too sometimes, replied Captain Ellie Thompson, leaning back in her chair with the casual demeanor that humans seem to wear like a second skin. The assembled alien dignitaries exchanged confused glances across the polished obsidian table. This was, after all, supposed to be a serious diplomatic briefing on interspecies relations, not whatever. This was. No, Captain Thompson, Vkr'lak continued, clearly irritated by the interruption. It is your species' propensity for what you call snapping. The moment when your outward civility breaks and reveals the primal creature beneath. Admiral Donovan cleared his throat, shooting a warning glance at Thompson. The last thing Earth needed was another diplomatic incident just because his most talented but infuriating captain couldn't resist being, well, herself. I believe Ambassador Vkr'lak has a valid observation, the Admiral said smoothly. Perhaps we should hear him out. Thank you, Admiral, the spider-like diplomat chittered, his voice translator giving his words an unsettling metallic quality. As I was saying, most species in the Galactic Confederacy undergo a careful evolutionary process. Violent tendencies are gradually bred out, making way for reason and cooperation. This is the natural order of advanced civilizations. Thompson couldn't help herself. But not us humans, huh? We just skipped that careful evolutionary process and went straight for the combo package of big brains plus berserker rage? Is that what you're getting at? The Aractilian clicked his mandibles together in what human xenologists had come to recognize as their equivalent of a condescending smile. Precisely, Captain. Your species is an evolutionary anomaly. You have achieved remarkable technological advancement while retaining primitive emotional responses. It is concerning. Lieutenant Wei, seated beside Thompson, leaned over and whispered, Is it just me, or is Spiderface basically calling us sophisticated savages? That's exactly what he's doing, Thompson whispered back. And the worst part is he's not entirely wrong. The diplomatic briefing had concluded hours ago, but Vkr'lak's words still echoed in Thompson's mind as she made her way to the station's observation deck. The vast expanse of stars always had a calming effect on her, a reminder that whatever political nonsense was happening inside the station was infinitesimal against the cosmic backdrop. She wasn't surprised to find Admiral Donovan already there, his weathered face illuminated by starlight as he gazed out at the void. Sir, she acknowledged, moving to stand beside him at the viewport. Captain, he replied without turning. I trust you're not here to cause another diplomatic incident? Thompson smiled despite herself. No promises, sir, but in my defense, Ambassador Eight Eyes started it. Donovan finally turned to face her, his expression stern but with the hint of amusement that always seemed to lurk beneath the surface. In the 20 years Thompson had known him, first as her instructor at the academy, and now as her commanding officer, she'd learned to read those micro-expressions. You realize what the Aractilians are doing, don't you? He asked. Thompson nodded. Testing our limits, pushing our buttons to see if we really do snap like they think we will. Exactly. And what did you just do in that meeting? She winced. Prove their point. A little bit. More than a little bit, Captain. Donovan sighed, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. The Galactic Confederacy is watching us closely. Earth has only had a seat at the table for 5 years. We're still the new kids, and plenty of species out there are waiting for us to screw up. I know, Thompson conceded. But you have to admit, their whole humans are unpredictable emotional time bombs narrative is getting old. We've been model citizens in galactic society. Have we? Donovan raised an eyebrow. Need I remind you of the Proxima Centauri incident? Thompson grimaced. That was an accident, mostly. Or the Titan mining dispute? Those corporate executives had it coming. Or perhaps the memorable first contact with the Cephalari, when Lieutenant Garcia. Okay, point taken. Thompson threw up her hands in surrender. We have some impulse control issues as a species, but we're working on it. Donovan's expression softened. Ellie, I need you to understand something. The Confederacy species have been spacefaring for millennia. Most of them evolved past their violent tendencies long before they achieved interstellar travel. We humans did it backwards. We took our aggression, our competitiveness, our stubbornness, and we used those traits to propel ourselves to the stars. That's not necessarily a bad thing, Thompson argued. Those same traits make us adaptable, resourceful, We think outside the box. I agree, Donovan said, surprising her. But it also makes us dangerous in their eyes. And after today's performance, I'd say Ambassador Zekethal is even more convinced of that fact. Thompson fell silent, watching as a small transport vessel glided past the viewport, its running lights blinking against the darkness. What do you want me to do, sir? She finally asked. I want you to be the liaison officer for the Aractilian delegation during their stay on the station. Thompson's jaw dropped. You can't be serious. After today, Zekethal will have a fit. Precisely why I'm assigning you, Donovan replied with a slight smile. You got under his exoskeleton. Now I want you to show him that humans can control their emotions, can be diplomatic even when provoked. Show him we're more than just sophisticated savages. Thompson groaned. This is punishment, isn't it? Consider it an opportunity for personal growth, Captain. Donovan's smile widened. Your first duty begins tomorrow at 0800. The ambassador has requested a tour of the station's hydroponics bay. Terrific, Thompson muttered. A morning stroll with Spiderface through the space farm. What could possibly go wrong? As it turned out, quite a lot could go wrong in a hydroponics bay when your tour companion had 8 legs, a venomous bite, and a superiority complex the size of Jupiter. And this, Thompson explained, gesturing to a vibrant section of plants with red and purple foliage, is our Terran peppers section. Everything from bell peppers to ghost peppers. Ambassador Zekethal peered at the plants with obvious disdain. Ah yes, the human fascination with self-inflicted pain through capsaicin consumption. Most peculiar. Thompson bit her tongue, literally, to keep from firing back a retort. It's not about pain, Ambassador. It's about the complex flavors and the endorphin release that follows. You derive pleasure from chemical compounds that evolved specifically to deter consumption? Zekethal's translator couldn't quite capture the incredulity in his chittering voice, but his body language, all 4 limbs raised in what the briefing materials called a gesture of astonished dismissal, made his feelings clear. We're an adaptable species, Thompson replied with forced cheerfulness. We find enjoyment in conquering challenges. Yes, Zekethal said, his compound eyes fixing on her. Your species does seem to equate struggle with virtue. Most primitive civilizations share this trait before they evolve past it. Thompson took a deep breath. She could almost hear Admiral Donovan's voice in her head. Personal growth opportunity, Captain. Right. Perhaps you'd like to see our section of adaptogenic fungi. They have remarkable medicinal properties that might interest your xenobiologists. The ambassador made a dismissive gesture with one of his upper limbs. The Aractilian Collective mastered mycological science before your species had discovered fire, Captain. But by all means, show me your quaint attempts. Don't snap. Don't snap. Do. Not. Snap. Thompson led the way to the fungi section, explaining the various Earth origin species and their uses. Zekethal followed, occasionally interjecting with comments about how the Aractilian equivalents were superior in every measurable way. After 20 minutes of this, Thompson was beginning to understand why some of her ancestors might have reached for the nearest shoe when encountering a spider. The thought made her smile despite her irritation. Something amuses you, Captain? Zekethal inquired, his translator giving his voice an annoying lilt. Just appreciating the irony of our situation, Ambassador, she replied honestly. Oh? Do elaborate. Thompson gestured broadly at the hydroponics bay. Here we are, surrounded by life from a dozen worlds, cooperating in a space station that represents the pinnacle of interspecies collaboration. And yet, we're still caught up in the same old dance of evolutionary one-upmanship. Zekethal's chelicerae clicked rapidly, a sign of surprise, according to the briefing materials. An astute observation, Captain. Perhaps there is more to you than I initially perceived. Thompson was about to respond when her comm unit chimed. Excuse me, Ambassador. She tapped the device. Thompson here. Admiral Donovan's voice came through, tight with tension. Captain, report to the command center immediately. We've got a situation. The command center was in controlled chaos when Thompson arrived, with officers moving purposefully between stations and the main display showing a vessel of unfamiliar configuration approaching the station. Status report, she demanded as she strode toward Admiral Donovan, who stood before the central holographic display. Unidentified vessel appeared at the edge of our sensor range 20 minutes ago, Donovan explained, his eyes never leaving the display. It's not responding to hails and is on a direct course for the station. Weapons? Active but not locked on, yet. Thompson studied the ship's configuration. It wasn't like anything in the Confederacy registry. The design was almost organic, with what appeared to be irregular protrusions along its hull. Any idea who they are? Actually, Donovan turned to her with a grim expression. Ambassador Vkr'lak might. Where is he? As if summoned by his name, the Aractilian diplomat skittered into the command center, his exoskeleton gleaming under the lights. Admiral, Captain, he acknowledged, then froze as his compound eyes fixed on the display. His entire body went rigid, and a high-pitched chittering sound escaped him before his translator could activate. The Vkr'lak, he finally said, the translator failing to mask the tremor in his voice. They have found us. Thompson exchanged a glance with Donovan. Friends of yours, Ambassador. Vkr'lak's chelicerae clacked together rapidly. The Vkr'lak are friends to no one, Captain. They are a race of biological harvesters. They collect genetic material from sentient species for repurposing. Repurposing? Donovan asked sharply. Explain. They incorporate desirable traits into their own genome, Vkr'lak explained. They are evolutionary thieves, taking by force what nature intended to develop over millennia. They sound charming, Thompson muttered. But why are they here? This station houses diplomats from over 20 species. It would be suicide to attack us. Vkr'lak turned his unsettling gaze toward her. They are not here for the station, Captain. They are here for humans. A cold silence fell over the command center. Come again? Thompson finally said. The Confederacy monitors all transmissions from member worlds, Vkr'lak explained. Recent Earth broadcasts have contained extensive information about human genetic research, particularly your advances in neurological enhancement and cellular regeneration. Those are medical technologies, Donovan interjected, designed to cure diseases, extend human lifespans. To the Vkr'lak, they represent desirable genetic traits, Vkr'lak replied. They have likely been monitoring your world for some time, waiting for an opportunity to acquire samples. Samples, Thompson repeated flatly. You mean abduct humans? Precisely. The communications officer spoke up. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the vessel. On screen? Donovan ordered. The holographic display shifted to show the interior of the alien vessel. The being centered in the frame had a vaguely humanoid shape, but its skin appeared to be a patchwork of different textures and colors. Its eyes, 3 of them arranged in a triangle, blinked asynchronously as it regarded them. Station authorities! The creature spoke in a voice that sounded like multiple beings talking in unison. We are the Vkr'lak Collective. We come with a simple proposition. Surrender all human personnel for biological assessment, and your station will be spared. Thompson couldn't help herself. Biological assessment? Is that what you're calling kidnapping and experimentation these days? The creature's 3 eyes focused on her. The human speaks. Good. Your species has uniquely adaptable neural pathways. Your genetic material will serve the collective well. Yeah, that's not happening, Thompson replied, squaring her shoulders. No one on this station is being assessed by you or anyone else. Donovan shot her a warning glance, but addressed the Vkr'lak himself. This station is under Galactic Confederacy protection. Any act of aggression will be met with a unified response from all member worlds. The Vkr'lak made a sound that might have been laughter. The Confederacy's response times are inadequate. By the time their vessels arrive, we will have what we came for. Sir, the tactical officer called out. They're powering up weapon systems. Shields to maximum, Donovan ordered. And inform all Confederacy vessels in the sector of our situation. The Vkr'lak tilted its patchwork head. Resistance is expected, but futile. We have studied human defensive capabilities. Your shields will not withstand our specialized weaponry. As if to prove the point, the ship fired a pulsing beam of energy that struck the station's shields. The lights flickered and the station trembled. Shield integrity at 60%, the tactical officer reported. Whatever that weapon is, it's specifically targeting our shield frequency. Thompson turned to Vkr'lak, who was watching the exchange with his limbs pulled close to his body. A defensive posture. Ambassador, any insights on their weapons technology? The Aractilian seemed to snap out of a daze. The Vkr'lak use biological technological hybrids. Their weapons adapt to defensive measures, much like a virus mutates to overcome antibodies. Great, Thompson muttered. So our shields are basically useless. Another blast rocked the station. Shield integrity at 30%, the tactical officer announced. One more hit like that and they're down. Donovan faced the Vkr'lak on the display. We have civilian diplomats from 23 species on this station. Are you prepared to create an interstellar incident by endangering them? The alien's three eyes blinked in that unsettling, asynchronous pattern. Non-human personnel will be unharmed if they do not interfere. This is our final communication. Prepare to be boarded. The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in tense silence. Options? Donovan asked the room at large. We could try modulating the shield frequencies, the tactical officer suggested. But given what the ambassador said about their adaptive technology, that might only buy us a few minutes. The station's escape pods? Thompson asked. Not enough for everyone, Donovan replied grimly, and they'd just pick them off one by one. Thompson paced, her mind racing. Something the Vkr'lak had said stuck with her. They've studied human defensive capabilities, she murmured, then turned to Zykthal. Ambassador, you said earlier that humans are evolutionary anomalies. That we retained our primitive responses despite our technological advancement. The Aractilian's chelicerae clicked uncertainly. Yes, though I fail to see how that observation helps our current predicament. A slow smile spread across Thompson's face. Because the Vkr'lak have studied our technology, our defenses, but I'm betting they haven't properly accounted for what happens when humans are backed into a corner. Donovan caught her eye, a spark of understanding passing between them. Captain, what exactly are you suggesting? Something primitive, sir, Thompson replied. Something the Vkr'lak won't expect from a civilized species. 15 minutes later, Thompson stood in the main shuttle bay, addressing a hastily assembled team of station personnel, both human and alien. Our plan is simple, she explained, gesturing to the modified shuttle behind her. When the Vkr'lak breach our shields, they'll likely dock at one of the primary airlocks. While they're focused on boarding, we'll launch this shuttle directly at their ship. Lieutenant Wei raised his hand. Captain? That's not a plan. That's a suicide run. Not quite, Lieutenant, Thompson replied with a grin that made several of the alien personnel take a step back. The shuttle will be unmanned, guided by remote, and it's not just going to ram them, it's going to deliver a very special package. She nodded to Chief Engineer Reyes, who stepped forward. We've modified the shuttle's warp core, Reyes explained. When it impacts the Vkr'lak ship, it'll create a controlled antimatter cascade. Not enough to destroy their vessel completely, but enough to disable their propulsion and weapon systems. That's... Wei searched for the word. Primitive. Exactly, Thompson agreed. High-tech solutions won't work against their adaptive weapons, but sometimes the oldest tricks are the most effective. Ambassador Zykthal, who had insisted on being part of the briefing, clicked his chelicerae in what Thompson was beginning to recognize as a gesture of disbelief. This plan is barbaric, he protested. Confederacy protocols specifically prohibit weaponizing warp technology. Got a better idea, Spiderface? Thompson challenged. Because in about 5 minutes, those genetic harvesters are going to board this station and start collecting samples from my crew. I'm not letting that happen. Another blast rocked the station, more violent than the previous ones. Shield failure imminent, announced the station's AI. Prepare for possible hull breach. Thompson faced the assembled team. This isn't just about protecting the humans on this station. If the Vkr'lak get what they want today, they'll be back for more. Maybe next time they'll decide Aractilian regenerative abilities would make a nice addition to their collection. Zekathal's compound eyes fixed on her, his posture rigid. Everyone clear on their roles? Thompson asked. Seeing nods all around, she clapped her hands. Then let's move. As the team dispersed, Zekathal approached her. Captain, I must register a formal protest against this course of action. Thompson sighed. Duly noted, Ambassador. Now, unless you're planning to physically stop me, I suggest you find somewhere secure to wait this out. Actually, the Aractilian said, surprising her, I wish to observe your operation, for diplomatic record-keeping purposes. Thompson studied him for a moment, then shrugged. Suit yourself, but stay out of the way. They made their way to the auxiliary control room, where Donovan and the engineering team were making final preparations for the shuttle launch. Vkr'lak ship is positioning to dock at Airlock 3, reported the tactical officer over the comm. They've deployed some kind of cutting beam. They'll be through in approximately 2 minutes. Shuttle remote systems online, Reyes announced. Warp core modification stable. We're ready to launch on your command, Admiral. Donovan glanced at Thompson. This was your idea, Captain. Care to do the honors? Thompson stepped up to the control console, aware of Zykthal watching her every move with those unsettling compound eyes. Launch sequence initiated, she announced, fingers flying over the controls. Bay doors opening in 3, 2, 1. The auxiliary view screen showed the shuttle bay doors sliding open, revealing the stars beyond, and the looming bulk of the Vkr'lak vessel. now attached to the station's hull at Airlock 3. Remote guidance active, Thompson continued, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. Shuttle away. They watched as the small craft emerged from the bay, thrusters firing to orient it toward the Vkr'lak ship. They've noticed, the tactical officer reported. They're trying to lock weapons. Too late, Thompson muttered, her hands tightening on the edge of the console. The shuttle accelerated toward the Vkr'lak vessel, covering the short distance in seconds. There was a brief flash as it impacted, followed by a much larger explosion that bloomed like a silent flower against the blackness of space. The station trembled with the shockwave, lights flickering momentarily. Direct hit, Reyes confirmed, studying the readings. Antimatter cascade successful. Their propulsion is offline, and weapons systems are showing massive power fluctuations. A cheer went up from the human personnel. Thompson allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction before turning to Zek-Thal. Still think we're too primitive, Ambassador? The Aractilian's posture was unreadable, but his voice, when translated, held a note of what might have been respect. Primitive, yes, but effective. Most unexpected. Captain, the communications officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from the Vkr'lak vessel. Put it through, Donovan ordered. The view screen shifted to show the interior of the alien ship, now bathed in red emergency lighting. The three-eyed being appeared, looking considerably less composed than before. Behind it, other figures moved frantically, attempting to repair damaged systems. This action, the Vkr'lak said, its multiple voice noticeably less confident, violates all Confederacy protocols on conflict resolution. Funny, Thompson replied, stepping into view of the transmission. I was about to say the same thing about your planned abduction of my crew. The alien's three eyes blinked rapidly. You have disabled our primary systems with a crude antimatter explosion. This is not the behavior of a civilized species. See, that's where you made your mistake, Thompson said, leaning forward slightly. You studied our defenses, our technology, but you forgot one critical thing about humans. And what is that? The Vkr'lak asked, its tone almost wary. Thompson smiled, cold and predatory. When you back us into a corner, we don't play by the rules. We do whatever it takes to protect our own. She gestured to someone off-screen, and the tactical officer's voice announced, Confederacy vessels responding to our distress call. Estimated arrival time 12 minutes. The Vkr'lak's patchwork face contorted in what might have been frustration. This is not over, human. The collective still requires your genetic material. Let me be very clear, Thompson replied, all trace of humor gone from her voice. If you or any of your kind come near a human settlement again, what happened today will seem like a friendly greeting. We won't just disable your ships, we'll reduce them to their component atoms. She leaned closer to the screen, her eyes hard. And then we'll find where the rest of you are hiding, and we'll show you exactly why the civilized species of the galaxy find us so terrifying. Are we understanding each other? The Vkr'lak was silent for a long moment, its three eyes fixed on her. Finally, it made a gesture that might have been concession. The collective will reconsider its acquisition priorities. Wise choice, Thompson replied. Now sit tight until the Confederacy ships arrive to escort you out of this sector. Thompson out. The transmission ended, and for a moment the auxiliary control room was silent. Then Donovan cleared his throat. Remind me never to back you into a corner, Captain. Thompson's fierce expression melted into a more familiar grin. Noted, sir. She turned to find Zek-Thal staring at her with an intensity that made her slightly uncomfortable. Something on your mind, Ambassador? The Aractilian's chelicerae clicked rapidly. I have spent decades studying various species across the galaxy, Captain Thompson. In all that time, I have never witnessed such a visceral display of protective instinct coupled with tactical innovation. I'll take that as a compliment, Thompson replied, unsure if it was actually meant as one. It was not intended as either compliment or criticism, Zek-Thal said. Merely an observation. Most species, when faced with a technologically superior adversary, respond with either capitulation or despair. You humans responded with creativity born of desperation. It is both fascinating and disturbing. Donovan joined them, looking worn but relieved. That's humans for you, Ambassador. We have a long history of turning desperation into our greatest strength. Zek-Thal's compound eyes shifted between them. The Confederacy Council will need to be informed of this incident. Your methods, while effective, directly contravened several interspecies protocols. Go ahead and tell them. Thompson said with a shrug. But also tell them that if we hadn't broken those protocols, this station and everyone on it would be in a very different situation right now. The Aractilian was silent for a moment, then made a gesture with his upper limbs that Thompson didn't recognize. I will include that in my report, Captain, along with my personal recommendation that the Council reconsider certain assumptions about human nature. With that cryptic statement, the ambassador turned and skittered from the room, leaving Thompson and Donovan to exchange puzzled glances. Did we just win a diplomatic victory along with a tactical one? Thompson asked. Donovan's mouth quirked in a half-smile. With the Aractilians, it's never that simple, but I think you made an impression. Sir, the tactical officer called out. Confederacy vessels have arrived and are moving to secure the Vkr'lak ship. Good, Donovan replied. Have our security teams stand down but remain on alert. He turned back to Thompson. Well, Captain, it seems your primitive solution saved the day. Thompson smiled. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways, sir. Indeed, Donovan agreed. Though I suspect explaining our weaponized shuttle to the Confederacy Security Council will be challenging. I volunteer Spider-Face for that job, Thompson quipped. He witnessed the whole thing, after all. Ambassador Zakthal, Donovan corrected with a sigh, though his eyes betrayed his amusement. And speaking of our arachnid friend, I think you might have changed his perspective on humanity today. For better or worse? Thompson asked. Donovan considered this. That remains to be seen, but any species that can improvise an antimatter bomb out of a shuttle in 15 minutes is bound to inspire either respect or fear. Possibly both. Thompson laughed. I'll take either over being harvested for my uniquely adaptable neural pathways. Thank you very much. As they left the auxiliary control room to check on the rest of the station, Thompson couldn't help but wonder what Ambassador Zichthal's report to the Confederacy Council would actually say about humans and their peculiar blend of advanced technology and primitive survival instincts. 3 days later, Thompson found herself once again in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The Vkr'lak ship had been escorted from the sector by Confederacy vessels, repairs to the station were nearly complete, and life was returning to normal. Or as normal as it ever got on an interspecies diplomatic outpost. She heard the distinctive sound of Aractilian limbs on the deck plating before Zakthal spoke. Captain Thompson. She turned, surprised to find the ambassador alone. Usually he traveled with at least one aide. Ambassador, what brings you to the observation deck? Zakthal moved to stand beside her, his eyes fixed on the starfield beyond the viewport. I have been reflecting on recent events. That makes two of us, Thompson replied. When the ambassador didn't continue, she prompted. And? What conclusions have you reached? The Aractilian's chelicerae clicked softly. The Confederacy Council has reviewed my report on the Vkr'lak incident. They have issued a formal censure of your methods. Thompson snorted. Shocking. However, Zakthal continued, they have also issued a commendation for your effectiveness in resolving the situation with minimal casualties. Now that was surprising. A censure and a commendation? Sounds like the Council couldn't make up its mind. The Council rarely speaks with one voice on any matter, Zakthal replied, particularly when it comes to humans. Thompson studied the alien diplomat. Despite weeks of interaction, she still found his body language nearly impossible to read. And what about you, Ambassador? Have you made up your mind about us primitive humans? Zakthal was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his translator gave his words an unusual cadence, as if it was struggling to capture nuances in his native language. In my culture, Captain, we have a concept called Tavrathal. The closest translation in your language might be beautiful danger. It refers to those things which are simultaneously terrifying and magnificent. A volcanic eruption, a collapsing star, the hunt of an apex predator. He turned his compound eyes toward her. I have come to believe that humans embody Tavrathal. You are dangerous, unpredictable, emotional creatures who should, by all logical assessments, have destroyed yourselves long before achieving spaceflight. And yet, those very same qualities, your stubborn resilience, your creative problem-solving born of desperation, your fierce protectiveness, have not only ensured your survival, but have made you a force to be reckoned with. Thompson wasn't sure how to respond to that. Thank you, I think. The ambassador made a gesture she recognized as the Aractilian equivalent of dismissal. It is neither compliment nor criticism, Captain. Merely the observation of one who has spent his life studying the patterns of sentient evolution. Humans are an aberration, A magnificent one, perhaps, but an aberration nonetheless. Well, when you put it that way, Thompson said dryly. Zyk'thal turned back to the viewport. The Vkr'lak will not trouble this sector again, I believe. Your demonstration has given them much to consider. Good, though I'm still curious why they targeted humans specifically. Your species possesses genetic adaptability unmatched in the known galaxy, Zyk'thal explained. Your neuroplasticity alone is remarkable. Add to that your cellular regenerative capabilities, immune system versatility, and psychological resilience. You are, from a purely biological perspective, a treasure trove of desirable traits. Thompson grimaced. When you put it that way, it sounds like we're just really fancy lab rats. To the Vkr'lak, all species are potential resources, Zyk'thal replied, but few offer the unique combinations that humans do. They fell silent, watching as a Confederacy patrol ship glided past the viewport, its running lights blinking against the darkness. I will be returning to my homeworld tomorrow, Zyk'thal said suddenly. My diplomatic tour on this station has concluded. Already? Thompson asked, surprised to find herself almost disappointed. I thought you were scheduled to stay another month. Events have accelerated certain discussions within the Aractilian collective. My presence is required. Something in his tone made Thompson suspicious. These certain discussions wouldn't happen to be about humans, would they? The ambassador's chelicerae clicked in what she now recognized as amusement. Perceptive, Captain. Yes, your handling of the Vkr'lak has prompted considerable debate among my people. Some see it as evidence that humans are too dangerous to be fully integrated into the Confederacy. Others argue that your unique approach to problem-solving makes you valuable allies. And which side are you on, Ambassador? Zyk'thal turned his unsettling gaze on her once more. I represent the middle path, Captain. I believe humans are indeed dangerous, but primarily to those who threaten what you value. You are, as your own history demonstrates, quite capable of terrible violence, but you are equally capable of remarkable compassion and self-sacrifice. He made a gesture with his upper limbs that Thompson had never seen before. In my report to the collective leadership, I have recommended that we deepen our alliance with Earth rather than distance ourselves from it. Better to have humans as friends than as potential adversaries. Thompson couldn't help but smile. That's probably wise. It is entirely self-interested, Zyk'thal replied matter-of-factly. When humans break, Captain Thompson, when you are pushed beyond your limits of tolerance, even the gods would be wise to shudder. The unexpected gravity of his statement hung in the air between them. Is that how the rest of the Confederacy sees us? Thompson asked quietly. As ticking time bombs? Many do, Zyk'thal acknowledged. But I have come to see your species differently. You are not bombs waiting to explode, but rather pressure vessels with remarkably effective release valves. Thompson raised an eyebrow. That's an interesting metaphor. Consider what happened with the Vkr'lak, the ambassador continued. When faced with an existential threat, you did not panic. You channeled your fear and aggression into a controlled, calculated response. Primitive, yes, but precisely calibrated to achieve your objective with minimal collateral damage. Huh, Thompson mused. When you put it that way, it almost sounds like you're admiring our barbaric tendencies. The Aractilian's chelicerae clicked rapidly. Let us say that I have developed a nuanced appreciation for the evolutionary path your species has taken. It is different from our own, but not without its advantages. Thompson laughed. Ambassador, I think that's the closest thing to a compliment you've ever given humans. Perhaps, Zyk'thal conceded, though I would prefer you did not share that observation with your Admiral Donovan. It would complicate diplomatic relations unnecessarily. Your secret's safe with me. Thompson assured him with a conspiratorial wink that she was fairly certain the ambassador wouldn't understand. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the stars. It was strange, Thompson thought, how quickly enemies could become allies when faced with a common threat. Or if not exactly allies, at least, mutual respecters of each other's capacity for violence. Before I depart, Zyk'thal said, breaking the silence, there is something I wish to give you. From a small pouch attached to his exoskeleton, he extracted a crystal-like object about the size of Thompson's thumb. It glowed with a soft, pulsing blue light. This is a Tavrathal stone, the ambassador explained. When one of my people recognizes Tavrathal in another species, it is customary to present such a token. Thompson accepted the crystal carefully. It was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. Thank you, Ambassador. I'm honored. It is not merely ceremonial, Zekthal continued. The crystal contains certain information that may be of value to your people in the future. Thompson looked at him sharply. What kind of information? Intelligence regarding certain factions within the Confederacy who share the Vkr'lak's interest in human genetic material, though their methods are more political than confrontational. Consider it a gesture of mutual self-interest. Her hand closed around the crystal. Why are you giving me this? Zekathal's compound eyes seemed to study her reaction. Because, Captain Thompson, while your species terrifies mine in many ways, there are things in this galaxy that should terrify us all. And when those threats emerge, I believe humans may be our best defense precisely because you have retained what the rest of us have evolved beyond. Our primitive survival instincts, Thompson said. Your indomitable will, Zekathal corrected. Your refusal to accept defeat even when logic dictates surrender as the optimal choice. He turned to leave, his 8 legs moving in that unsettlingly fluid motion. At the doorway he paused. One last observation, Captain. You once called me Spider-Face in what I presume was an attempt at human bonding through mild insult. Thompson winced. About that, Zekthal raised a limb. It was not entirely inaccurate, though anatomically incomplete. However, should we meet again, I would prefer you use my name. Fair enough, Thompson replied, suppressing a smile. Safe travels, Ambassador Zekthal. The Aractilian made a gesture that might have been farewell, then disappeared through the doorway, leaving Thompson alone with the stars and the glowing crystal in her palm. 6 months later, Admiral Donovan found Captain Thompson in the same spot on the observation deck. She was holding something small and blue in her hand, staring at it thoughtfully. Captain, he greeted her. The Confederacy Council's annual security review just concluded. Thompson pocketed the object and straightened. And, how bad is it? Surprisingly positive, Donovan replied, moving to stand beside her. It seems Ambassador Zekthal's report carried significant weight. The Council has approved expanded human participation in Confederacy security operations. Thompson's eyebrows shot up. They're letting us join the peacekeeping forces? Better than that, Donovan said with the hint of a smile. They're creating a new rapid response unit specifically designed around human tactics and decision-making, and they want you to command it. Thompson stared at him, momentarily speechless. Me? But I'm the one who violated Confederacy protocols with that shuttle stunt. Precisely why they want you, Donovan explained. The Vkr'lak incident wasn't the last of its kind. There have been 3 similar confrontations in other sectors over the past 6 months. None ended as cleanly as ours did. Thompson's mind raced. Thompson's mind. The crystal, she murmured. Pardon? She shook her head. Nothing, sir, just thinking aloud. She turned to face Donovan fully. This new unit, what exactly would its mandate be? To respond to threats that don't respond to standard Confederacy diplomatic or military protocols, Donovan said. In other words, Captain, they want you to be their controlled explosion when the situation calls for it. Thompson couldn't help but laugh. So they're officially sanctioning our primitive, barbaric methods? With appropriate oversight, of course, Donovan added dryly. But essentially, yes. The Confederacy has realized that sometimes the old ways are indeed the best ways. What did Spider? Thompson caught herself. What did Ambassador Zekthal call it? Tavrathel? Beautiful danger, Donovan nodded. An apt description of humanity's place in the galactic community, it seems. Thompson turned back to the viewport, gazing out at the stars that suddenly seemed full of new possibilities and new threats. Well, sir, she said finally, if the Confederacy wants humans to be their beautiful danger, who am I to argue? Donovan smiled. That's the spirit, Captain. He handed her a datapad. Your new assignment details. You'll be stationed aboard the Confederacy vessel Vigilant with a mixed-species crew, but operational command will be yours. Thompson scanned the document, her excitement growing with each line. This wasn't just a promotion. It was validation of everything she believed about humanity's place among the stars. When do I start? She asked. The Vigilant arrives tomorrow, Donovan replied. I suggest you get packing. As the Admiral left, Thompson pulled the Tavrathel stone from her pocket. It pulsed more brightly now, as if responding to her elevated heartbeat. Clever Spider, she murmured. You knew this was coming all along, didn't you? The crystal merely glowed in response, but Thompson could almost imagine Zekthal's chelicerae clicking in that way that might have been laughter. She had spent her career proving that humans belonged among the stars. Now she had the chance to prove why the stars needed humans. With all their primitive instincts, their irrational emotions, and their stubborn refusal to follow the rules when the situation demanded something more creative. When humans break, even the gods shudder. And if the Vkr'lak or anyone else wanted to test that warning, Captain Ellie Thompson would be more than happy to demonstrate exactly what it meant. She pocketed the crystal, squared her shoulders, and headed off to prepare for her new command. The first human to lead a Confederacy rapid response unit, and almost certainly not the last. Beautiful danger indeed. The end. You want us to do what now? Admiral Kenzie Thompson stared at the holographic alien ambassador, her coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. We would like humanity to formally join the Galactic Coalition and assist us in our ongoing conflict with the Vkr'lak Empire, repeated Ambassador Vkr'lak, his six-eyed face utterly serious despite the request being absolutely bonkers. The war has reached a critical point. We've been fighting for 73 of your Earth years. Kenzie set down her mug and glanced at the other officials gathered in the Pentagon's newly constructed Extraterrestrial Affairs Division. General Mateo Alvarez was pinching the bridge of his nose. Dr. Layla Okafor, Earth's premier xenobiologist, was frantically scribbling notes. President Wu just looked tired. Ambassador, President Wu said carefully, Earth only discovered the existence of alien life 6 weeks ago, when your scout ship landed in Nebraska and scared the living daylights out of a corn farmer. Now you're asking us to join an intergalactic war? Yes, Vkr'lak replied simply, as if this were the most reasonable request in the universe. His translucent blue form flickered slightly in the hologram. The Vkr'lak have pushed us back to our last defensive line. Their hive mind tactical approach has overwhelmed even our most sophisticated military algorithms. We need unconventional thinking. Kenzie couldn't help it. She laughed. So let me get this straight. You have faster-than-light travel, antimatter weapons, and artificial intelligence that can calculate 1 billion chess moves per second. But you want help from a species that still gets emotional about sports and argues about pineapple on pizza? Vkr'lak's head tendrils wiggled in what the humans had come to recognize as embarrassment. We've been monitoring your broadcasts for decades. Your species possesses a unique ability for what you call thinking outside the box. Your military history demonstrates remarkable adaptability and creative problem-solving. General Alvarez perked up at that. Military people always loved a good compliment. The Vkr'lak operate on pure logic, the ambassador continued. Their tactics are perfect, but predictable. We believe humans might see solutions where our hyper-rational approach fails. Dr. Okafor finally looked up from her notes. Ambassador, you're telling us that an advanced alien coalition wants our help because we're, what, chaotic? Unpredictable, Vkr'lak corrected. Imaginative, sometimes irrational, but brilliantly so. Kenzie snorted. He's saying we're space lunatics, and that's apparently a good thing. President Wu shot her a look that screamed diplomatic incident, but the ambassador's translation device must have caught her comment because his upper eyes crinkled in what they'd learned was amusement. Not lunatics, Admiral. But your species does embrace chaos theory in ways ours never could. You see patterns in randomness. You make intuitive leaps. He paused, searching for the right words. You improvise. President Wu leaned forward. What exactly would you expect from us, Ambassador? We have no spaceships capable of interstellar travel, no weapons that could possibly match your technology level. We would provide the transport and weaponry, Vkr'lak said. We need your strategists, your military minds. Perhaps a small contingent of your Special Forces soldiers to implement their plans. General Alvarez straightened his uniform. How many personnel are we talking about? Perhaps 200? A planning team and execution squad would suffice. Kenzie nearly choked on her coffee. 200 people? To turn the tide of a galaxy-spanning war? Are you serious? The ambassador's tendrils flattened against his head. Completely serious, Admiral. The Vkr'lak have surrounded our last stronghold in the Cygnus Arm. Our mathematicians calculate total defeat within 14 of your Earth days unless something changes dramatically. A heavy silence fell over the room. Can you give us a moment to discuss this privately, Ambassador? President Wu finally asked. Of course. I will withdraw to my ship and await your decision. The hologram flickered and disappeared. As soon as he was gone, the room erupted. This is insane, Kenzie said, throwing up her hands. They want us to solve an intergalactic war that's been going on for over 7 decades? In 2 weeks? Dr. Okafor was still writing furiously. The scientific exchange opportunities alone make this worth considering. Think of what we could learn. Or how quickly we could get ourselves killed, General Alvarez countered. We have no idea what we're walking into. President Wu raised a hand, and the room quieted. Let's look at this logically. If the Galactic Coalition falls, what happens to Earth? Dr. Okafor looked up grimly. Based on what the ambassador has shared about the Vkr'lak, they're expansionists who strip mine planets and enslave populations for resource extraction. If they win this war, we're next on the menu, Kenzie finished. Or we could be looking at our species' entry onto the galactic stage, President Wu mused. A chance to prove ourselves as valuable allies. General Alvarez sighed. If we're going to do this, I want our best people. Special forces from all branches, our top strategists from the war colleges, intelligence analysts, and me, Kenzie interjected. Everyone turned to look at her. What? I'm not missing humanity's first space battle. Besides, I've beaten the Pentagon's AI in simulated naval engagements 16 times running. If they need unconventional thinking, I'm your girl. President Wu looked like she had aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes, but she nodded. Admiral Thompson will lead the military contingent. General Alvarez will coordinate from Earth. Dr. Okafor, you'll head the scientific team. She stood up. Let's recall the ambassador and tell him humanity is joining the fight. 48 hours later, Kenzie found herself on what the coalition forces called a small transport vessel, though it was roughly the size of an aircraft carrier. They were hurtling through space at speeds her brain couldn't comprehend, surrounded by technology that made Earth's most advanced systems look like tin cans with string. So this is FTL travel, she murmured, staring out a viewport at the streaks of light. Beats economy class on United. Beside her, Lieutenant Colonel Theo Morrison chuckled. A career special forces operator with more combat decorations than most small countries had in their entire military. Morrison had been appointed as her second-in-command. Enjoying the view, Admiral? Just contemplating how utterly out of our depth we are, she replied cheerfully. Nothing like being asked to win a war we didn't even know existed until this week. Morrison shrugged, his muscular frame making the coalition-provided uniform look uncomfortably tight. Not so different from some of my deployments. Drop in, figure it out, adapt, and overcome. Except this time we're dropping into an actual space battle against an enemy hive mind with tech thousands of years beyond ours. Details, Morrison said with a dismissive wave of his hand. Besides, that's why we brought the nerds. He gestured toward the large central chamber of their transport, where Earth's hastily assembled team of military strategists, hackers, engineers, and assorted specialists were huddled around holographic displays, arguing loudly and gesturing at star maps that showed the coalition's dire situation. Dr. Lydia Barrett, a game theory specialist from DARPA, was currently in a heated debate with Commander Jin Park of Naval Intelligence. Nearby, a group of cyber warfare experts were examining schematics of Vkr'lak communication systems, with expressions of mingled horror and delight. I still can't believe President Wu authorized this mission, Kenzie said. What choice did she have? Morrison replied. If what the blue squid people say is true, and these Vkr'lak win their war, Earth is just another resource-rich planet ripe for conquest. Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of their coalition liaison, a being named Vkr'lak, whose species resembled a cross between a praying mantis and a dolphin, if dolphins had iridescent scales and 4 sets of limbs. Admiral Thompson, Vkr'lak clicked, the translator device at his throat converting his natural sounds to English. We are approaching the Cygnus defense perimeter. The High Command is eager to meet with your team. How eager? Kenzie asked. On a scale from polite diplomatic interest to desperately pinning all their hopes on the primitive monkey people? Vkr'lak's head tilted at an angle that suggested confusion, but the translator must have captured her sarcasm because he responded, I believe desperate would be the accurate assessment. The Vkr'lak have breached our tertiary defenses in 3 sectors. Our predictive models give us less than 10 solar days before total systemic collapse. No pressure, Morrison muttered. Gather the team, Kenzie told him. I want everyone ready for the briefing when we dock. As Morrison moved off to round up their specialists, Kenzie turned back to the viewport. The streaking lights had resolved into starfields again, and in the distance, she could make out an enormous structure. A space station or orbital platform of some kind, surrounded by a constellation of smaller craft. That's Coalition Command? She asked Vkr'lak. Yes, the Nexus Citadel, our last major fortress in this sector. As they drew closer, Kenzie could see signs of battle. Sections of the station were dark or showed damage, and what she assumed were military vessels moved in defensive patterns around the perimeter. "Trelk," she said quietly, "level with me. Does your leadership actually believe we can help? Or is this just a desperate last throw of the dice?" The alien was silent for a moment, his compound eyes reflecting the starlight. "Both," he finally answered. "Our analysis of your species' military history shows a remarkable capacity for achieving victory against superior forces through unorthodox methods." "You mean we fight dirty?" "I mean you find solutions where none appear to exist." Trelk's mandibles clicked in what might have been appreciation. "The Vkr'lak cannot comprehend this. Their hive mind processes all variables and selects the optimal strategy every time, but they cannot conceive of approaches that defy optimal logic." "And you think we can?" "Admiral," Trelk said, "your people invented kamikaze attacks, guerrilla warfare, and something called Yeet the Baby, which I admit I do not fully understand but appears to involve surprising an opponent with unexpected projectiles." Kenzie bit back a laugh. "I'm going to need to have a word with whoever's been explaining human warfare to you." "My point," Trelk continued, "is that we need exactly what makes your species occasionally terrifying to the rest of the galaxy. Your ability to do the unexpected, even the irrational, and somehow make it work." Before she could respond, Morrison returned with the core team. "Everyone's assembling in the transport bay, Admiral. We're docking in 10 minutes. Kenzie nodded. "All right, people. Remember what we discussed. We're representing Earth here. Let's try not to look completely out of our element." Dr. Barrett adjusted her glasses nervously. "No pressure, just saving the galaxy on our first trip to space." "Look at it this way," said Commander Park. "If we fail, none of us will live long enough to face the congressional inquiry." "That's the spirit," Kenzie said dryly. "Embrace the chaos." The Nexus Citadel was a marvel of engineering, a sprawling complex of interconnected modules and chambers that housed representatives from over 30 species, all members of the Galactic Coalition. Under different circumstances, Kenzie would have been awestruck by the diversity of life forms and technologies surrounding her. As it was, she barely had time to register the alien architecture before being whisked into what appeared to be a war room. The Coalition High Command consisted of 7 beings, each from a different member species. They sat in a semicircle facing the human delegation, their expressions, where readable, universally grim. "Welcome, humans of Earth," said the central figure, a tall, crystalline entity whose voice seemed to emanate from everywhere at once. "I am Supreme Commander Genla. We appreciate your willingness to join our struggle at this critical hour." Kenzie stepped forward. "Thank you, Supreme Commander. We're honored to be here, though I wish the circumstances were different." "As do we all," Genla replied. With a gesture of a crystalline appendage, a massive holographic display materialized in the center of the room, showing star systems, fleet positions, and battle lines. "This is our current situation." For the next hour, the Coalition commanders detailed the state of the war. The Vkr'lak Empire, a collective consciousness controlling billions of drone bodies, had been expanding for centuries, consuming resources and incorporating useful species into their hive. The Coalition had formed to resist them, and for decades had managed to maintain a stalemate through superior tactics and technology. But 15 years ago, something had changed. The Vkr'lak had developed new predictive algorithms, allowing them to anticipate and counter Coalition strategies with devastating accuracy. Since then, it had been a fighting retreat across dozens of star systems. "We have lost 67% of our territory," said a reptilian commander whose scales shifted colors as she spoke. "Our remaining forces are stretched thin, defending critical systems. We cannot match the Vkr'lak drone production capacity." "What about their central consciousness?" asked Dr. Barrett. "If they operate as a hive mind, there must be a primary node or nexus." "Shielded and hidden deep within their territory," replied another commander. This one a gelatinous being contained in what looked like a hovering fishbowl. "We have attempted targeted strikes 17 times, all failed." Kenzie studied the holographic map, her mind racing. "What's this cluster here?" She pointed to a dense formation of Vkr'lak ships near what appeared to be a nebula. "Their command and control center for this sector," Genla explained, "protected by their heaviest defenses and quantum encryption barriers. It coordinates all Vkr'lak forces in the region." "And if it were disabled?" The commanders exchanged looks. "Their forces would be temporarily disorganized until the primary consciousness could establish new command pathways," said Genla. "But penetrating those defenses is impossible. Our simulations show a success probability of 0.0037%. Kenzie grinned. Never tell a human the odds. It just motivates us. She turned to her team. Dr. Barrett, Commander Park, what are your initial thoughts? Barrett stepped forward, examining the display. The Vkr'lak rely on predictive modeling, correct? They anticipate your moves based on historical patterns and optimal response scenarios? Correct, said the reptilian commander. Their tactical algorithms have analyzed every battle in our 73-year conflict. They can predict our strategies before we even fully deploy them. Then we need to do something they've never seen before, Kenzie said. Something so contrary to military logic that their algorithms can't process it. Morrison snorted. So, standard Marine Corps procedure. That earned him a few confused looks from the Coalition commanders. But Kenzie was already moving forward, mind racing. I need to know everything about their command center's defenses, communication protocols, and response patterns. And I need to know what assets we have available. For the next several hours, they dove deep into the Coalition's intelligence on Vkr'lak operations. The more Kenzie learned, the more a plan began to form in her mind. A completely insane, probably suicidal plan that defied conventional military wisdom. In other words, exactly what they needed. By the time she called her core team into a private chamber for discussion, she was almost vibrating with nervous energy. All right, she said once they were alone. Here's what we know. The Vkr'lak predict responses based on optimal military strategy. Their algorithms can't comprehend actions that are deliberately suboptimal or seemingly irrational. So we need to be irrational, Commander Park said, nodding. Act against our own apparent interest. Exactly. Kenzie pointed to the station schematics they'd been given. The Coalition has a stealth insertion vessel they've been saving for a last-ditch assassination attempt on the Vkr'lak Queen. It can get a small team past the outer defenses of their command center, but no further because of the detection grid. Morrison frowned. What good does that do us if we can't reach the target? We don't need to reach it physically, Dr. Barrett interjected, her eyes lighting up as she caught on to Kenzie's thinking. We just need to disrupt their communication network. If we can't beat their encryption, we overload it, Kenzie finished with a grin. Flood their systems with so much contradictory data that they can't process it all. Commander Park looked skeptical. The Coalition has tried cyber attacks before. The Vkr'lak adaptive firewalls are too sophisticated. Yes, but they've never tried a human-style cyber attack, Kenzie countered. Coalition systems are all about elegance and efficiency. Ours are... She gestured vaguely. A hot mess? Suggested Morrison. Creative, Kenzie corrected. We need every hacker, programmer, and digital warfare specialist we brought with us. And I need to talk to the Coalition engineers about their communication protocols. Dr. Barrett was already making notes on her tablet. If we can introduce enough noise into their system, conflicting orders, false intelligence, recursive loops, it might create a cascading failure in their decision matrices. Meanwhile, Kenzie continued, we launch a conventional attack, but one designed to look like a desperate, poorly conceived last stand. Something so tactically unsound that the Vkr'lak will commit significant resources to crushing it. Morrison caught on. A diversion. More than that, Kenzie said. Bait. We want them fully committed to crushing our main attack when the real operation kicks in. This is completely crazy, Commander Park said slowly. And it might actually work. Kenzie clapped her hands together. That's the spirit. Now, let's go tell the Coalition commanders we plan to win this war by deliberately losing a battle in the most spectacular way possible. Convincing the Coalition High Command to adopt what Morrison had dubbed Operation Dumpster Fire proved surprisingly easy. When your back is against the wall and conventional tactics have failed for decades, even the most outlandish strategy starts to look appealing. The plan came together in fevered bursts of activity over the next 36 hours. Coalition engineers worked alongside Earth's cyber specialists to create what one hacker called the most beautifully chaotic malware in the history of computing, a digital weapon designed not to penetrate Vkr'lak defenses, but to overwhelm them with contradictory inputs. Meanwhile, Kenzie and Morrison worked with Coalition fleet commanders to design a battle plan that was, in the words of a horrified Coalition tactician, tactically unsound, strategically reckless, and guaranteed to result in catastrophic losses. That's the idea? Kenzie had replied cheerfully. We want the Vkr'lak to think they've figured us out completely. Now, standing on the bridge of the Coalition flagship Eternal Vigilance, Kenzie watched as the fleet moved into position. Beside her, Supreme Commander Genla observed with an air of resigned anticipation. Your species truly is remarkable, Admiral Thompson, the crystalline being said. To conceptualize a strategy predicated on deliberate failure, it is not a thought pattern our military academies would ever cultivate. That's because you folks are too logical, Kenzie replied, checking the mission timer on her console. Humans have perfected the art of snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. Sometimes we even put ourselves in the jaws of defeat on purpose, just to make the victory more satisfying. A strange approach to warfare, but an effective one, historically speaking. Kenzie turned to the communications officer, a six-armed being whose name she couldn't pronounce. Status of Operation Noise Complaint? Insertion team has reached deployment range, came the reply. Awaiting your signal to proceed. Kenzie nodded. And the main fleet? Morrison answered from his station. All ships in position. The Vkr'lak have detected our movement and are responding exactly as predicted. Their analytical systems have identified our formation as a prelude to a desperate breakthrough attempt. Perfect. Kenzie took a deep breath. Commence primary engagement. Let's make this look good, people. The coalition fleet surged forward in what appeared to be a frontal assault on the Vkr'lak lines, a move so obviously doomed that even a first-year military cadet would have questioned it. Ships moved in tight formations, presenting easy targets. Attack patterns were repetitive and predictable. On the tactical display, Kenzie watched as the Vkr'lak responded exactly as hoped, shifting their forces to create an encirclement. Their algorithmic mind had calculated the optimal counter to this apparent suicide run and was executing it flawlessly. They're committing additional forces from their reserve, Morrison reported, unable to keep the satisfaction from his voice. They think they're about to deliver a killing blow. Insertion team status? Kenzie asked. In position and undetected, came the response. Deployment of package in 3 minutes. The package was a specially modified probe carrying Earth's digital weapon, a chaotic blend of malware, corrupted data, and what one programmer had described as weaponized nonsense. Its purpose was not to destroy the Vkr'lak systems, but to introduce so much contradictory information that their decision-making processes would be temporarily paralyzed. Coalition fleet reporting heavy losses, Morrison said grimly. 23% of engaged vessels damaged or destroyed. Kenzie felt a pang of guilt for the lives being lost in what was essentially an elaborate feint, but pushed it aside. If their plan failed, every being in the coalition would suffer far worse. Insertion team has deployed the package, the communications officer announced. Initiating transmission, now. For several tense moments, nothing seemed to happen. The battle continued to unfold on the tactical displays, with coalition forces being steadily pushed back and surrounded, exactly as planned, but at terrible cost. Then suddenly, a ripple seemed to pass through the Vkr'lak formation. Ships began to move erratically, some breaking formation, others stopping entirely. It's working, Dr. Barrett exclaimed from her monitoring station. Their command network is experiencing cascading authentication failures. Decision matrices are receiving contradictory tactical assessments. Kenzie leaned forward, hardly daring to breathe. How long until they purge the corruption? Difficult to say. Minutes, maybe hours if we're lucky. Their adaptive algorithms are already working to isolate the affected systems. Then we don't waste time. Kenzie turned to Supreme Commander Genla. Now, Commander, execute Phase 3. Genla gave the equivalent of a nod and issued commands in their crystalline language. Immediately, the tactical display shifted. Hidden coalition reserves surged forward from concealed positions, striking at the now disorganized Vkr'lak formations. Ships that had appeared to be retreating suddenly reversed course, revealing weapon systems that had been powered down to avoid detection. The entire battle plan inverted in an instant. What had appeared to be a desperate, doomed assault transformed into a carefully orchestrated trap, with the Vkr'lak forces now caught in the very encirclement they had planned to create. Their command ships are attempting to re-establish control, Morrison reported. But individual drone vessels are receiving conflicting orders. Some are attacking each other. On the tactical display, Kenzie watched as the Vkr'lak formation, previously a model of efficiency and coordination, dissolved into chaos. Without centralized guidance, individual ships fell back on pre-programmed routines that often contradicted each other in the current situation. Press the advantage, Kenzie ordered. Target their heavy weapons platforms first, then communication relays. The battle shifted dramatically over the next hour. Coalition forces, no longer bound by the constraints of the feint, executed a series of rapid, decisive strikes against key Vkr'lak vessels. Without their predictive advantage, the hive mind's forces were suddenly vulnerable, their numerical superiority undermined by confusion and disorganization. Vkr'lak Central Command is attempting a system-wide reset, Dr. Barrett announced. They're trying to purge our package and re-establish control protocols. How long? Kenzie demanded. Unknown, but we're seeing signs of recovery in Sectors 3 and 7. Kenzie turned to Morrison. Time to roll the dice again. Initiate Operation Bad Idea. Morrison grinned and relayed the order. Moments later, a small flotilla of Coalition fast attack vessels broke from the main formation, accelerating to maximum speed on a direct course for the Vkr'lak command center. What is this? Genla asked, alarm evident in their crystalline tones. This was not part of the agreed strategy. Call it a human improvisation, Kenzie replied, watching the ships streak across the tactical display. Those vessels are carrying electromagnetic pulse generators modified with your quantum disruption technology. If they can get close enough to the Vkr'lak command center, they will never penetrate those defenses, Genla protested. The sacrifice will be for nothing. They don't need to penetrate, Kenzie said calmly. They just need to get close enough for the combined pulse to temporarily disrupt the Vkr'lak's recovery efforts. Buy us more time to press our advantage. On the display, the attack squadron encountered heavy resistance as they approached the Vkr'lak command structure. One by one, Coalition ships winked out, destroyed by defensive fire or kamikaze drones. Last vessel approaching minimum effective range, Morrison reported, his voice tight. Taking heavy damage. They're not going to make it. Kenzie watched, heart in her throat, as the final ship in the squadron pushed forward, its engines blazing at emergency capacity. Just as it seemed certain to be destroyed, the vessel suddenly executed a maneuver that defied conventional physics. A desperate burn of maneuvering thrusters combined with a controlled overload of its gravity stabilizers. The ship tumbled end over end, confusing Vkr'lak targeting systems just long enough to cross into the effective range of its primary weapon. Pulse detonation confirmed, Morrison shouted. Direct hit on the command center's outer defensive grid. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Vkr'lak ships nearest the command center went completely dark, their systems overloaded by the electromagnetic surge. Further out, vessels that had been beginning to coordinate again fell back into disarray. The reset sequence has been interrupted, Dr. Barrett confirmed, her voice rising with excitement. Their recovery efforts have been set back significantly. Kenzie turned to Supreme Commander Genla. This is our moment. Commit everything you have. Push for their command center while they're vulnerable. For the next 2 hours, the battle raged across the sector. Coalition forces, emboldened by their unexpected advantage, pressed forward with renewed determination. The Vkr'lak, stripped of their predictive edge and coordination, fought with decreasing effectiveness. By the time the Vkr'lak managed to re-establish partial control of their forces, it was too late. Coalition ships had penetrated their inner defensive perimeter and were systematically destroying key command nodes and communication hubs. They're signaling withdrawal, Morrison announced, disbelief evident in his voice. The main Vkr'lak fleet is pulling back from the sector. A cheer went up from the Coalition crew, quickly spreading across the bridge. Kenzie found herself grinning so hard her face hurt, the adrenaline of the past hours finally catching up to her. Genla approached, their crystalline form glowing with what Kenzie had learned to recognize as intense emotion. Admiral Thompson, I lack the words to express the Coalition's gratitude. In 3 of your Earth hours, you have accomplished what we could not in 73 years of conflict. Kenzie shook her head. We haven't won the war, Commander. We've won a battle. An important one, but just one battle. Yes, but you have done more than that, Genla replied. You have proven the Vkr'lak can be defeated. You have given the Coalition something it has lacked for many years. What's that? Hope. The crystalline commander's glow intensified, and a new approach to warfare that the Vkr'lak cannot easily counter. Their entire strategic paradigm is based on predicting logical responses. You have shown us how to be gloriously, effectively illogical. Morrison joined them, his uniform showing signs of the intense hours they'd just experienced. So what happens now? Now, Kenzie said, we teach the Coalition everything we know about human military history. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, strategic misdirection. All the dirty tricks we've developed over thousands of years of fighting each other. And we improve our digital weapons, added Dr. Barrett, approaching with her team of programmers. The package worked better than we expected, but the Vkr'lak will adapt. We need to stay ahead of them. Genla made a gesture that seemed to encompass the entire bridge. The Galactic Council has authorized me to extend a formal invitation to Earth. We would be honored to welcome humanity as full members of the Coalition, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Kenzie exchanged looks with her team. That's a decision for our government to make, Commander. But speaking personally, I think humanity just found its place in the galaxy. As the species crazy enough to win an impossible war? Morrison asked with a smirk. As the species that thinks differently, Kenzie corrected. Sometimes that's exactly what the universe needs. 3 weeks later, Kenzie stood at a viewport on the Nexus Citadel, watching as the first official delegation from Earth arrived. In the time since the battle, now being called the Miracle at Cygnus by coalition media, the war had shifted dramatically. Armed with human tactical insights and a newfound willingness to embrace unconventional strategies, coalition forces had reclaimed 3-star systems and forced the Vkr'lak into a defensive posture for the first time in 15 years. "Penny for your thoughts, Admiral?" Morrison asked, joining her at the viewport. "Just thinking about what Ambassador Zixnal said when he first came to Earth," she replied. "That they needed us because we're unpredictable, imaginative. Space lunatics," Morrison added with a grin. "Exactly." Kenzie gestured toward the stars beyond the station. "The galaxy is full of incredibly advanced civilizations, but they all approached war like a math problem to be solved. It took a bunch of upstart humans to remind them that sometimes you have to throw out the textbook." Morrison nodded. "The coalition tacticians are still trying to understand how we came up with Operation Dumpster Fire. I tried explaining that human military history is basically one long series of people doing extremely inadvisable things that somehow work out." "Not always," Kenzie said soberly, thinking of the coalition ships lost in the battle. "But sometimes being crazy enough to try the impossible is exactly what's needed." Below them, the Earth delegation's ship was docking, bringing diplomats, scientists, and additional military personnel to formalize humanity's new role in the Galactic Coalition. Earth was stepping onto the interstellar stage not as conquerors or victims, but as equal partners bringing a unique perspective to a civilization thousands of years more advanced than their own. "You know what the best part is?" Morrison said after a moment of contemplation. "What's that?" "Somewhere out there, the Vkr'lak are trying to update their predictive algorithms to account for human irrationality." He chuckled. "Good luck with that. We can't even predict ourselves half the time." Kenzie laughed. "Maybe that's our greatest strength. The willingness to try something that probably won't work, on the off chance that it might." "Humanity, fuck yeah," Morrison said quietly. "Indeed, Lieutenant Colonel." Kenzie straightened her uniform as the delegation approached. "Welcome to the galaxy. It turns out they needed us after all. The end."